Hello, I'm Brent Walker. I'm the Executive Director Emeritus of the Baptist Joint Committee for Religious Liberty. I've been asked to reflect for a few minutes on what it was like 20 years ago, the morning of 9/11, here at the offices of the Baptist Joint Committee, and a little bit about what happened in the aftermath of 9/11. It's really hard to believe for me. It doesn't seem like 20 years have gone by. It seems like much more recently than that. I'm sitting here in the offices of the Baptist Joint Committee, where I sat on that morning in my office. This was my office. It has now been expanded and converted into our primary conference room, but this is where approximately I sat on that fateful morning. It was a nice day, kind of like today, a pretty day in the words of my mother. A late summer, sunny, warm, not humid, but with a touch of fall in the air, both here in the nation's capital and also I think in New York City. It was a normal day at work as well as it started out. Back then we had cell phones, but we didn't have smartphones, and we didn't have much social media going on. We did have two aged televisions, one here in my office and one down the hall at our library, but they weren't on. They were off. Back then, we didn't cut them on at 8 in the morning and off at 6 at night when we were working. We just didn't follow it that closely, so the TVs were off. But all of a sudden, Larry Chesser, our communications director, got a call from his wife, Nancy, who was traveling, and she was in her hotel room, had the TV on, and saw the first collision in the tower, and called Larry immediately, and he told the rest of us, and we turned the TVs on and flocked in front of them, watching with unbelief the ghastly events as they unfolded. At first we actually thought it was an accident. People were saying, you think maybe it was an accident? Because we had collisions by aircraft in buildings before. But we thought, yeah, surely this is some kind of accident. But when the next tower got hit, it was clear that it was not an accident, but a hellish attack by terrorists. We watched a little longer and then heard the bad news about the Pentagon being hit. And I was sitting here at that point and actually turned and looked out my window, which faces west. And in real time, I could see the smoke billowing up from the Pentagon out on the horizon over and above the Capitol dome. And that really brought it home. We were just continuing to watch in disbelief, and finally decided, there's no reason to stay here. We've all got to go home. There were rumors that the Supreme Court is next across the street. That maybe the Capitol Dome would be hit. That's 2 blocks away. The White House is less than a mile away. And all of that may well have happened, but for the brave heroes on the United Flight 93 in the Pennsylvania fields. So we gathered around the table and in the library and had a time of prayer, and then we all dispersed and left to go home. Let me tell you, and for the archives, who was on the staff then at the Baptist Joint Committee in September of 2001. First of all, myself. And then Holly Holman, the General Counsel and Associate Executive Director, but she was not here that morning. She was home on maternity leave. But the rest of the staff was here. Larry Chesser, the Director of Communications, Wanda Henry, the Administrator, Whitney Washington, the Assistant to the General Counsel, Jeff Hewitt, the Associate Director of Communications, Matt Anderson, the Development Associate and Database Manager. And then we had 2 interns. We had Laura Cadena from Texas and Daniel Whitehead from Kentucky. So we all left the offices, and we got down on the street, and it was such a strange experience. It was crowded with a lot of movement, people moving, not hurriedly but purposefully, it seemed. But it was quiet. You could hear a pin drop even with all the people out there. Just absolute no talking. I guess everyone, as we were in shock and just didn't know what to say. I had parked a couple blocks away that morning here on the hill. You could do that if you knew where the free parking spots were. You could get them and park all day long on the street. And that day I had parked in front of the Attorney General's house, John Ashcroft's house, right next to where I had parked. And I was walking down the street. I saw a phalanx of security personnel kind of surrounding his house and also surrounding my car in the process. And I thought, oh no, this is going to be interesting. But I went up and I kind of broke the perimeter and said, that's my car and I need to leave. I said, okay, sure, fine. And they let me in and I departed. I normally would travel west down Constitution Avenue to get to my home in Northern Virginia in Falls Church, but I knew that it was going to be clogged up because of its proximity to the White House and the monuments. That it may not be able to go even if it weren't clogged with traffic. So I decided to go east, to take off and to go into Maryland and hit the Capitol Beltway at about 2 o'clock, and then come around with a counterclockwise motion into Northern Virginia, and then down to my home in Falls Church. Normally it takes me 25 minutes to get home. That day it was 3 hours plus. The traffic was just horrendous, and the other staffers got home in various ways. The interns lived right across the street, so theirs was an easy one. And in fact, I recall that Matt Anderson walked home to Alexandria. He went over first to DuPont, where his wife Sue was working, and then from there they walked and went across the Potomac on Memorial Bridge, and then down the bike path all the way to Old Town. They may well have taken 3 hours or more too to hoof it on foot, but everybody got home pretty much safe and sound that day. The weeks after 9/11, the Baptist Joint Committee was an active participant in the public dialogue as all of us mourned 3,000 plus fellow countrymen who died that day. We called for an expression of healthy patriotism, but not jingoistic nationalism. We applauded, in the words of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the warm courage of our national unity. But yeah, we said, punish the wrongdoers, punish them severely, but don't impugn all of Islam for it. President George Bush was very, very helpful here in his rhetoric, tamping down the burgeoning Islamophobia that accompanied 9/11. Don't impugn all of Islam for the wayward acts of a handful of folks, criminals. Don't sow seeds of hatred, we said, as some religious leaders were wont to do. They said that it was God's judgment on their theological and political and religious adversaries. Don't sow seeds of hatred. Don't give up on our civil liberties either, particularly our First Amendment 5 freedoms. That's when we need these enforced all the more, when you have a national crisis. In fact, we helped prepare a white paper titled "In Defense of Freedom in a Time of Crisis" that was signed on to by 128 other agencies and religious groups from across the theological and political spectrum. People like the ACLU, about the American Muslim Council, or the Rutherford Institute, the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission of the Southern Baptist Convention, the National Council of Churches of Christ, and the Eagle Forum. All of these groups got together and signed off on this statement. The statement was reproduced in our report from the Capitol, volume 56, number 19, on the 26th of September 2001. But I understand it's also going to be added as a link to the video so you can read the whole thing. But let me just read point number 10, which kind of concludes and summarizes the gist of the statement. And it says this: "We must have faith in our democratic system and our Constitution, and in our ability to protect at the same time both freedom and the security of the American people." Yes, it's a both and proposition, not an either or deal. We're still struggling with these tensions, aren't we? 20 years hence, we're still struggling with freedom and security, reasonable collectivism and radical individualism, private bodily autonomy and public health, the free exercise of religion and non-discrimination. We're still struggling with these tensions, and we're still plagued with anti-Muslim animus. You see it all over the place. Islamophobia reigns. And we're still fighting, aren't we, Christian nationalism and white supremacy. This is why it's so important that we continue to support the Baptist Joint Committee, as I do, in our daily prayers and in our monthly and annual gifts. As someone who labored in these halls for 28 years, I'm so proud of the outstanding work that the Baptist Joint Committee staff is doing under Amanda Tyler's good leadership. And I hope you are proud too. Let's all remember the BJC in our prayers and with our pocketbooks and our support. Thank you.